All right, let's just jump into the conversation that's on my mind, right now, and that is, I want to share some differences, some distinctions that I think when you really understand this, it can have a major impact on your business, not only from the standpoint of, building more production or increasing your production, but decreasing your frustration. Now, a lot of people probably perked up and said, well, I need some of that. I'd love to decrease my frustration in the business. And so I want to talk about smoke screens versus objections. And I want to touch on conditions versus objections. So I just kind of want to touch on those conversations because, there's a lot of confusion, or I should say there's a lot of people that don't even know that there's a such thing as a smoke screen in our business, and they know that there's some of you will know there's conditions. Everybody knows there's something called objections, but most people don't understand smoke screens. And I just want to touch on that a little bit. So, the best example that I can give somebody when it comes to a smoke screen is when you go into the department store. I just went into one yesterday, and the person, you go into the department store and they say, can I help you? What do you say? You know it. You say, no, I'm just looking. You know the script, right? See, that's a smoke screen. That wasn't an objection, and that's not a condition. Okay? It's not an objection, and it's not a condition. It is nothing more than a smoke screen. I wanted to kind of put up a smoke screen to buy myself a little time before I had to get engaged with some salesperson about a product. And we do this a lot. Like in the real estate world, you go to you call it expired and they say, oh no, I'm not selling. Now they've been on the market for 9 months, reduced it 5 times, switched agents 3 times. And they're finally saying, I'm not selling. No, I'm not selling was a smokescreen that wanted to buy them some time, or they felt like you would buy it and you would hang up. So then they would not have to engage in the conversation that they were getting ready to engage in. See, that smoke screen bought them time. It kind of allows you to sidestep for a minute and not deal with what's coming at you at the moment. That's a smoke screen, okay? Then let's just talk about conditions and objections. There's this one statement, and I don't remember, it's one of the Mike Ferry, Tom Ferry, Matthew Ferry, said this, probably Mike, or probably Matthew actually. Never accept a no when a yes is still possible. Never accept a no when a yes is still possible. Okay? So, if there's a yes still possible, then that means it's an objection. If there's not a yes possible, then it's a condition. For instance, if you need 2 signatures and there's only one person in front of you, it's not even possible to get 2 signatures legally at that time. That would be a condition. Like you could not get 2 signatures if there's only one person in front of you at that moment. Now, if there's 2 people in front of you and they won't give you the signatures, then yes, it's still possible. Like they could give you a signature, so that would be an objection. They could, but they're not at the moment is an objection versus it cannot happen. One of the things that I can't stand is when somebody says, I know the reason my property doesn't sell is because it's on a busy corner. I can't move the house. So so people act as if that's a condition. Well, it's on a busy corner. It's a condition. We can't, it's just what it is. I said, no. That's not a condition, even though that they may say it is, because all that really is what the problem really is the property is overpriced based on it being on that corner. See, that's really more of, even though somebody will start to take a position as if that's a condition and they're a victim of that condition, there's still a yes possible, and the yes that's possible is a price adjustment. That's why that you got to listen to those things and understand, is that a condition or an objection? Because when you think something is a condition, guess what you don't do? You don't address the objection. And a lot of times what people will do in real estate is they'll hear everything as if it is a condition, and they don't fight for the business. They don't keep going. They stop, because a condition is a condition. It's when you can't move forward. So if it's truly a condition, then you might as well stop, because you can't move forward. But the key is your mind will play tricks on you, and you will think things that are objections, you'll actually make them to be conditions to let yourself off the hook to fight for the business. So when somebody says, I'm going with another agent, I may say to them, okay, I don't think you've actually listed the property. Is that correct? Well, no, I haven't listed it yet. Then I'm going with another agent. Sounds as if it's a definite. But because a yes is still possible, that they could choose me, then that doesn't make it a condition. So I need to continue talking to them and seeing how I can convince them to get a second opinion. So I may say, well, look, I understand that you're thinking of going with a different agent. You might have one already picked out in your mind. I would imagine, though, it probably doesn't really matter to you what agent you choose. What really matters is choosing the agent that can get you the most money. Is that correct? Well, yeah, I mean, basically, we just want the agent that can get us the most money. Well, good. Well, I'm going to come over tomorrow at 2 o'clock and sit down with you and show you how I can put more money in your pocket than other agents can based on the demand I can create for your property. Again, you said you wanted top price, right? Okay, good. I'll see you tomorrow at 2. You see, because I looked at that as an objection, I didn't hear it as a condition, I kept going. And when I keep going, I will set more appointments. In a negotiation, you'll have a seller, almost all the time, or they'll say, or a buyer will say, well, the seller will say, I can't take that price. Or the buyer will say, I can't pay that price. That is not a factual statement that will hold true. Like, they can pay that price. They may not want to. They may not understand that the price that they're asking and they're wanting is unreasonable and wouldn't even appraise. But see, some people in a negotiation hear, I can't take that price. And then all of a sudden, they look at that as a condition and they say, well, what price will you take? And then the seller's now in control. That's like, if you're going to the doctor, it says, I don't want you to cut off my leg. And the doctor says, okay, well, what would you like me to do? I know what I would do if the doctor asked me that question. I'd leave and get a second opinion, because I'm like, wait, the doctor's supposed to be telling me what to do, not asking me what I would like to have done. See, it's a big difference in a condition and an objection. There are very few conditions. One condition that remains to be a condition that you're never going to be able to handle because it's a definite is death. Like when you're talking to somebody and they are not the owner and the owner's passed away, maybe it could be a possibility that that person cannot make a decision. Like it has to be, you have to talk to somebody at the estate or in the probate process. There could be some situations where you're not talking to a decision maker, so that could be a condition. But when you're dealing with a decision maker, very few times is there a condition. Now, if somebody says, I was selling to relocate and the job just got filled, I'm too late, I'm no longer going to be transferred to that could be a condition. But very rarely are we in that particular scenario. If somebody says, I can't take that price, I may say something like this, I understand. And what I hear you saying is that you want the most that the market will bear. Is that right? Yes. You want the most the market will bear. Is that right? Yes. Okay, great. Well, let's talk about the market, what's going on in the market. Let's reevaluate what's happening. Set the offer that you have in hand right now aside, and let's just look at what the market value is and then make a decision on how to approach this offer. How about that? See how I kind of they says, I can't take that price. I says, okay, well, I understand. What I hear you saying is that you want top dollar. You want every bit of what the market will bear. Is that right? Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. Okay, then now start going back and talking about what the market will bear. And then when you say the market's only going, as you can see, the market, the top price that the market will bear right now is $199,000. So now we look at this offer that's at $197,000. It actually doesn't look that bad, does it? Well, I guess not, based on the market. But if I heard that as a condition, I wouldn't use an objection handler. And if I didn't use that objection handler, I might not get to the yes that was actually still possible. Here's the key. And I tell you, this is probably where my family love and, they probably love and hate me in a lot of areas. So I won't say this is the most. This is just one of them where they love and hate me. So they love it when we're at a restaurant and one of my family members, my daughter goes up there, or wife goes up there, and they say an hour wait. And I'm like, that's not a condition. That's an objection. There's a yes still possible. And then I walk up there and I scan the restaurant and I say, what about that? And what if we did this? And what if we do that? And all of a sudden now we got a seat in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. They love that. But you got to understand, my mind doesn't hear no if I want to hear yes. If I want to hear yes, I am constantly looking for an angle. I am constantly looking for how do we get to the yes. In 99% of the time, a yes is still possible. The only reason we don't get to a yes is because you looked at it as a condition and you stopped moving forward. Now, where my kids can't stand it is when they say, "Oh, I don't like that." You don't like that? Have you tried it? No. Oh, so I know that statement is not something that they actually said based on experience, right? So I'll just keep going and going and going and going, and I'll turn that "I can't" into an "I must," which would be a Tony Robbins, thing. In other words, when they say "I can't," oh no. They present it as it's a condition. Oh, I can't do that. I couldn't climb that wall. Oh, no. Your ass is going up that wall. You are going up that wall for sure, 100%. The fire department may be called to get you down off that wall, but you're going up because there's no can'ts in this deal. See, that's again where I'm just not accepting a no when a yes is still possible. Don't accept no's when yeses are still possible. So I'll use an example from a great agent in Myrtle Beach. Anthony and he and I were talking this morning, and we had a great conversation about a FSBO who has a buyer that's going to come down in the next 3 weeks to a month, and the for-sale owner's not going to list because they want to wait on that buyer. Now, you probably see a lot of for-sale owners have situations like that. And a lot of for-sale owners, it sounds very logical to them to do that. And for most real estate agents, that's a condition. It's they're not going to do anything for the next 3 weeks because they got this buyer on the hook that they could make, they could make a sale and not have to pay a real estate commission. So the FSBO is probably going to actually do that. It's a condition. So I'll just wait it out. But when I talked to Anthony, I said, hey, let's call this guy back. And let's tell this guy, hey, Mr. For-sale owner, I've thought about it over the evening, and I came up with a solution where everyone can win. Do you mind if I explain that to you? Well, what are you talking about? Well, that buyer that you have coming down in 3 weeks? How about we do this? How about we go ahead and list the property today at $199,000? which is more than you're trying to force about owner. It covers the commission and whatnot. At the same token, what I'll do is I'll write in an exclusion for that buyer. Let's call the buyer John Doe. I will write into the listing agreement that seller has the right to sell to John Doe within the next 21 days. In the event that John Doe writes a contract within the next 21 days, agent agrees to terminate the listing agreement and allow the for sale by owner to close the transaction directly and not owe any commissions. Then you say to the seller, you say, and Mr. Seller, let me tell you why you would want to do this. You would want to do this because as soon as you sign and list with me, you can call the buyer. You can call John Doe and say, John, hey, just wanted you to know I listed the property today with an agent and we priced it at $199. But I actually put in an exclusion for the next 21 days that if you do come down and look at the property and want to buy it, I can still honor that price of $187 that I told you and that I advertised for. But after 21 days, that price is going to be $199 because I only have 3 weeks with the exclusion. So if you really want to buy this property at a discounted price, then you need to come down. You see, Mr. Seller, you see how I can now help you create urgency with that buyer by giving them a financial incentive to come down here and buy this property. And if that is not a good enough incentive for this buyer to come down here and buy this property in the next 21 days, then you didn't even have a buyer. So see how we all win? Number one, I expose your property at a market price that I think that I can get it for. And if that works, great, you're happy. And then at the same token, we created urgency with the buyer that you have on the hook. So if he then comes over and wants to take advantage of the incentive you built in, then you're happy. See, and if we don't do this, then this buyer who may not even be interested could just keep dragging you along week after week after week until you miss the big selling season of the year. And now you wouldn't want that, would you? You see, when I heard it as an objection, that gave me the inspiration and the ability to have that conversation. When I hear it as a condition, I hang up and just call back in 2 weeks to see if he heard from the buyer. And then guess what happens? Somebody else in the market hears him as an objection, goes over there, handles the objection, gets the listing. So when I call back, I figure out he's already listed with somebody else. This is the value of understanding conditions versus objections. Again, conditions, things that cannot be controlled. Objections appear when you listen to what somebody's saying and there's still a yes still possible. Like, I don't want to blank. There is a yes still possible. Well, I don't want to, I don't want to go for a run. Well, but they could, right? They just don't want to. So a yes is still possible. I don't want to go to that restaurant, but they could. So a yes is still possible. And I can't tends to be more of a condition, but make sure you listen because they may disguise the I can't. They may be using I can't as just a stronger version of I don't want to. So really listen if somebody says something to you and ask yourself, is a yes still possible? Now, my friends know that they probably know if I know they've all felt this, whether they remember or they consciously, it comes to their mind, that it's probably just a game for me. It is a game. Like, I can't stand it when somebody says no and a yes is still possible. I've got to get a yes out of them. That's just kind of how I feel. So it's easier. Guess what the easiest thing to do with me is? Just say yes in the beginning, and we don't have to go through it all. Now, most people didn't get that. That was kind of a joke, so I guess we'll just kind of move on. Okay, so we got conditions, we got objections, and we've got smoke screens. So smoke screens are really kind of like objections, but really smoke screens are just little things that we say that we really don't mean, but we were just trying to kind of avoid the conversation at the moment. Smoke screens are things that we really don't mean, but we kind of say them to just avoid having the conversation that we just don't feel like having at the moment. That's what a smokescreen is. A condition is an I can't, it cannot, there's no options, it cannot be controlled. And an objection is any time that a yes is still possible, which is, by the way, the majority of the time. Now that I've given you this information, you're going to hear how often buyers and sellers give you objections, but you hear them as conditions. Somebody says, and I hear this sometimes in the office, especially the seasoned agents, a buyer says, well, I'm not going to come down there for until September, but I'd like to start getting some information. And then a seasoned agent, a newer agent will hear that as a condition. Well, they're not going to be here until September, so I can't really do anything. I can send them some alerts and stuff, but they can't be here till September. A seasoned agent would say, okay, fantastic. Well, we can surely get a lot accomplished. And I'm just kind of curious, if there was a property that came available that met all your criteria, and I went out and previewed it and actually did a FaceTime video with you and walked you through, and it met every criteria and you liked the condition, would you be in a position to possibly make an offer based on that? Well, for the right property, I guess we could do that. You see how that, like a seasoned agent that looks at it and says a yes is still possible would use that script. A newer agent would just hear that as a condition and say, okay, I'll just follow up with them once a month until September. And by the time that September comes around, they either are no longer in touch with that buyer or that buyer has purchased. I'll tell you one of the greatest probably memories that I have, and it was a time where some of you won't know this, the younger agents have never used one maybe, when we got the fax machine, because we used to have to mail all the listings out. And I hated it when we had to mail all the listings out. Well, I shouldn't say I hated it because I didn't know anything better, right? It was just the standard procedure. You have an agreement over, about a listing. If they were out-of-state owner, we could mail it. And so then we got this thing called the fax machine, right? Well, not everybody had fax machines. A lot of businesses had fax machines. The banks would have fax machines. Kinko's came out and they had fax machines, and what would happen is we had fax machines in the office. So I would ask the people when they agreed to list with me and say, hey, do you mind if I fax it to you? Well, I don't have a fax machine. Okay. I could have looked at that and said, they don't have a fax machine. That's a condition, so I've got to mail it. But I decided I wasn't going to do that. I decided that there's a yes still possible because you have a bank, right? Yeah, I have a bank account. Okay, well, your bank has a fax machine. What's the name of your bank? And I would call the bank and say, confirm, you guys have a fax machine, don't you? Okay, John Doe's going to come down. I'm going to fax something. What's your number? And I'm going to fax something. John Doe's going to come down. He needs to get this, look at it. Can you fax it back for me? The bank would look at that as doing a service for their client, so they would say yes. Okay, so who will be receiving the bank or the fax? Because when John Doe comes in, who should he ask for? Well, have him ask for Jane Doe. Okay, great. I will fax it in the next 10 minutes and tell John to come on down there in the next hour or so and ask for Jane. Then I called John. John, I spoke with the bank. Jane's going to have that thing waiting for you. So when you get there, the best thing to do is just kind of go to the side, read it real quick, sign it, give it back to Jane. She'll fax it back to me. See, that was when a yes was still possible right there. That was great, right? And then Kinko's came along, and Kinko's was popping up everywhere, like McDonald's. In every little town, there was a Kinko's. So we would just look up Kinko's in the town, call Kinko's, and do the same exact thing. We had people going to Kinko's and talking about me and my dad. Kinko's in their banks, their law offices, or wherever that had fax machines. And then what was happening is what we found a lot of times, because I'd get phone calls from other agents where agents were like, they were talking to another agent and they were talking to me at the same time, and where they had like, okay, they liked us both, and then all of a sudden they told us both, yeah, just send me the paperwork. And that's what they used to do. Well, just send me the paperwork, send me the paperwork, send me the paperwork. They'd say that to 2 or 3 agents, and then they would get three sets of paperwork in snail mail in their mailbox, and they would sign one and send it back. Well, what would happen? I said, screw that. I'm just going to fax it. And so if they told somebody to send it in the mail, then I knew it was going to be about 3 days before they got it, and I would fax it. I had 3 days to actually go ahead and work them to make sure that my paperwork came back. And because they had to go to the bank, and Jane Doe met them at the bank and had instructions to fax it back, they were always sending my paperwork back. I bet you I did hundreds and hundreds of listings like that because a yes was still possible. That was 20-something years ago. And today, already this morning, there has been an objection where there was a yes still possible. You heard it as a condition, and you didn't, and you stopped fighting. You stopped moving forward. Now, that might have been this morning when the alarm went off and you said, I'm too tired, I can't get up. You could have, but you didn't. That was really an objection, but you stayed in bed as if it was a condition. See, it started for a lot of people there. So I know that between the moment you woke up and the moment that we're here together right now on this phone call, you have already accepted a no when a yes was still possible. And it's okay, because we'll be doing it in the next couple of hours again and again and again. Today's call, I just wanted to introduce the concept to you. So as you're working with buyers and sellers, you can listen a little bit more carefully, and make sure that you keep moving forward when there's still a yes in the horizon. Hopefully you found that helpful. If you need anything, have any questions, if you have any scenarios where you feel like there's really an objection this is just an objection and there's no possible way that you can handle it, run it by me. That's exactly what Anthony and I did this morning, and I can assure you he'll be calling that for-sale owner. He'll practice the script, call the for-sale owner, and he will share that information. And it may work and it may not work, but guess what he's doing? He's continuing to move forward. And even if the seller doesn't agree, the fact that he, as an agent, offered the seller one more option will put him a level above the other agent other agents that for-sale owner is talking to. So it will benefit him whether or not it gets him that listing in the next couple of days or not. Hopefully that was helpful. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.